All right, finna go to get it started. We're gonna just be reacting to some Chris Williamson and some Alex Hormozi. I have already reacted to two parts of the same podcast that came out recently. If you haven't checked those out, please feel free to go ahead and check them out for sure. But we're gonna go ahead and rock it, man. All right. Also, one thing I want to say before I actually get it started: if there's any specific content that you want me to react to that you think is worthy of my reaction, feel free to leave it in the comments. If it's a creator, if it's a video, please let me know for sure. All right, let's get. Hold up, man.
I think I've got the first fifth day and
Right.
still haven't, quote, made a dent in this list. And then you do it another day and a third day and a fifth day and a fifth week. And then all of a sudden you're like, okay, I think I've got the first one done. And then you still look at this list, but along the way of doing that first one, you realize 20 other things that you could add to that list.
For every one that you cross off, you create 10 more because you start to win in the weeds. You start to look at a higher resolution.
And that's the never ending cycle of excellence.
Facts.
It makes great things seem closer than you thought and further than you thought at the same time.
100%.
There's no perfect way to live your 20s. You either live them up and become an underskilled 30-year-old, or you work them up and become an underlived 30-year-old. You just have to figure out which you'd rather be, accept the trade-offs, and know that there are no do-overs.
And door 3, if you consider work, life, then you get to do both.
Come on, man.
That one ruffled a lot of feathers.
Oh, I bet.
Well, it's because people look back on their 20s and realize that they are one or the other.
All right, I'm going to lean into this. I am okay. I had a conversation with my team about this, and I said, I am okay being a beacon of relentless hard work. I'm okay being the guy who says, fuck your mental health. I'm okay with it because I've given it a lot of thought. I think that the other side is wildly overrepresented, and I'm willing to sit on the logical extreme because I think it will help more people. And there are more people that I have met in my life who are dissatisfied by their live it up 20s than dissatisfied by their work it up 20s. Because most of the time in your 20s, you have no idea what you want. But knowing what you need to do to work and move ahead is fairly straightforward. And so you can take the known and make progress on the one that you have high confidence that you can make progress on. And then along the way, gain perspective on what are the things that are actually important to you in your life. And you may find out often that there are far fewer of those things than you really originally thought, because what you thought live them up in your 20s was actually your mom and your two homies who are both mediocre, and you don't care about their opinion now when you're 30 anyways. But what a waste of a life it would have been to, quote, live up your mom's dream or your friend's dreams to then only get to your 30s and realize you didn't live it up and you also didn't work it up. And now you have neither.
So here's an interesting perspective for sure. Obviously, like he had mentioned, he's a beacon of work and overworking. He doesn't really care about mental health, and that's all. That's all cool and whatever, right? But I think at the end of the day, there's no perfect way to live up your 20s. Living up your 20s, it needs to be something where you truly evaluate what you really value in this life. What do you value? What are you going to value? If you don't value it now, what is something that you can see yourself valuing? What do you want to do? And how do you want to improve? And how do you want your life to progress? Answering all these questions is going to help you make decisions a lot quicker and a lot better. So let's just say, for example, if you can see yourself wanting a relationship, you probably should try to settle down in your 20s, right? And a lot of people would recommend, oh, just work and don't settle down, and it's just going to be a distraction and this and this and this, right? But if it's going to bring you the absolute life fulfillment that you're looking for, why would you not spend time, or why would you not want to work on that specific skill? Because if you don't, it is just going to be another one of those skills that you have underdeveloped, right? So your 20s is the perfect spot for you to develop your values and develop what you want, and truly become clear on these things that so many people in their 30s, if they do live it up in their 20s, that they're lacking. They're lacking clarity in a lot of things. If you could just become clear on those things, you can still have somewhat of a delicate balance between living up your 20s and working up your 20s, because you'll at least know what you need to work on and be working towards it, as well as you can just also go ahead and enjoy whatever that looks like to you. I feel like that looks different for every single person, but enjoy your 20s the way that you would like. So find a way to do both. And I would say don't just work in your 20s and not enjoy it, because quite frankly, when you're in your 50s and 60s, maybe have a lot of money because you worked it up in your 20s, maybe you'd say, man, I wish I could just go back and enjoy a moment in my 20s. You want to be able to say you at least did something and enjoyed your 20s. And on top of that, you also don't want to be a person who's, like you had mentioned, right, 30 and underskilled and didn't put in any work, and now you're just a underskilled 30-year-old. You don't want to be like that. So therefore you need to develop, and more importantly, become clear on the skills that you would like to develop. So do both. Why not?
I think a lot about, you know, the first day that I sat down at university, my first ever seminar, I sat next to my what would be future business partner for 15 years. So I'm skint. I say to him, I'd spent all of my money partying during Freshers Week. The first week, I'd spent my entire maintenance loan, which was supposed to be food and everything else for the rest of the term until fucking Christmas. And it's September the 29th.
It's a big week.
It was a good week, which I could not survive now. And I think back to sort of the time that I spent and the endless hours. Like, I'm not kidding, and I don't reflect that much on the club promo stuff. Maybe to my detriment. I should do it more. I've spent between 5,000 and 10,000 hours stood on the front door of nightclubs. I've spent at least 3,000 hours stood on the front door of the same nightclub, only on Saturdays. Right? I didn't miss 202 Saturdays in a row. I took 4-day holidays from Sunday to Thursday so that I could come back to come and do this thing. And I look back at my 20s and I think, was that how much was living, how much was accumulating skills? And the grass is always greener with this, because in hindsight, you think, well, you imagine that you could have gone back and still accumulated all of the insights and the skills that you really value in yourself. That would have still happened, but that you would have got to maybe have more variety, or you would have maybe the fun or the whatever the thing. And when I look, for me, with my constitution, at what I value most in myself, almost all of those things have been accumulated by having a 20s and now a 30s that has been dedicated to work it up, not to live it up, to 4-day holidays in between those things. Now, remembering that now is not forever, I think, is really important. Again, you're on the outlier right-hand end of the distribution for work. Most people are going to pull themselves back across in terms of balance between work and play. But you can periodize what you're doing right now. You can accumulate all of that work, all of that experience, all of that explore time to work out. Actually, I don't like doing admin stuff. It turns out I'm really great at creative, or I really don't like traveling. It turns out I'm really great at routine. All of those things. There's like a buy-in. You remember CrossFit? You do a buy-in thing. It's a 1-mile run, and then it's this workout. You have to do that buy-in. Let's say everyone has to do that buy-in. Doing that buy-in when you're 25 is way easier than doing that buy-in when you're 40. Right?
That's true.
I finally work out who I am in the world, because you start to accumulate all of these better directional assistances. You're moving in a more directionally accurate way earlier, which means that you make more progress over the long term. So in retrospect, I'm glad that I did work it up 20s, and I'm glad that I did work it up 30s as well.
And he said it perfect, right? You need to find a balance between both of them. And at the end of the day, if you can become clear with your values and what you want to pursue within this life, right? What is the lifestyle that you want to live? What are the few areas that you want to focus in on and truly fully pursue? Once you can find the answer to all those questions, you're going to be in a position that not many people are in, where they can develop their skills in their 20s and not just waste it away having a good time. Or better yet, a person who, what am I trying to say? You can be different. You can be different based on how you spend that amount of time. And with that being said, if you're able to find a balance that is going to be best for you based off of what you value, you're going to be in a much better spot than most people. Most people don't figure out their values into the later years in life, 30s, 40s, 50s. Now you understand. Now most people understand what they truly value and how they should live their life and the lifestyle that they want to pursue. The quicker you're able to do that, the better you're going to be able to better balance enjoyment of life as well as working in that enjoyment, right? If you're able to balance both of those things at the same time, it's going to look like becoming clear on what you need and what you want in this life. Therefore, over time, the earlier you can find this out for yourself, over time you can have the enjoyment because you're pursuing the things that you're truly passionate about and the lifestyle that you want to pursue, while also being able to enjoy whatever that looks like as far as enjoyment, whether this is going out or whether this is hanging out with friends or whatever it is, right? You'll be able to have a good balance, and it's something that it will be worth your time and it won't be a waste of your time.
So I'll say two things that might be helpful. One is, you obviously know my stance if you're listening to this on work-life balance, but maybe as a concession for you, your work-life balance obsession may just be too narrowly focused on the present and not extended into seasons. And so you can have work-life balance where I work for 3 years and then I have a more chill year. And I think that most people think about work life in terms of their split of the day rather than their split of the year or the decade. And I think that you can have a much better outcome on both sides if you were to split it up on a longer time horizon.
So good. I mean, everybody knows what it's like to go through it every January. Intense period of diet. I fucked it at Christmas again. Too much chocolate, too much dinner. And you go, okay, well, what are you going to do? I'm going to work hard. I'm going to focus on my diet and my training for a while, and then I'm going to hold those gains for a period. Or I'm going to build a business. Okay, my health's probably going to take a hit for a little while. Or I just got out of a relationship. I need to go dating. All right, well, I'm probably not going to be able to spend so much time at work. Or maybe I'm going to be sleeping later, so my fitness is going to knock off a little bit. All of these things happen for periods of time. And yeah, remembering that now isn't forever is... And that's such a great frame, like a hyperbolic discounting and inability to be able to imagine that this is not the way that it's always going to be. And that's good. For good things and for bad things. This isn't the way it's always going to be. So I better enjoy this win. This isn't the way it's always going to be. So I better not get too disheartened by this loss. You will come back. That's the beautiful thing about this sort of hedonic renormalizing. You go, good things aren't as good as you think they are. Bad things aren't as bad as you think they are.
So if you use that extended frame as a way to approach different types of goals, so I'll break a...
I want to go back a little bit.
You will come back. That's the beautiful thing about this sort of hedonic renormalizing. You go, good things aren't as good as you think they are. Bad things aren't as bad as you think they are.
That's an interesting point right there. I once heard this lyric in this song. It's called Dopamine. It's a song called Dopamine by Boz and Cause as well. They're talking about this one concept, right? You're never as low as you think, and you're only as low as you think. Those are such profound ideas when you think about it, right? Think about it. Break it down. You're only as low as you think, or you're never as low as you think, and you're only as low as you think. Very, very profound, man. When I heard that, I was like, man, wait a second. They're actually talking about something right now.
So if you use that extended frame as a way to approach different types of goals, so I'll break a very standard one, which is that people measure the amount of calories that they need to eat per day. But very few people measure the amount of calories they need to eat per week. And so people will blow the day and say, well, screw it, I messed up today. I might as well have a pizza on top of it because I had chocolate and I went off my diet or whatever. But if you have a weekly outlook even, then all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, I can have a pizza tonight. I'll just skip most of my food tomorrow besides protein. Or I'll have a wedding weekend and know that this whole week I'm going to be light. And so I have, 13,000 calories for the next 7 days that I can work my way through, which gives me a tremendous amount of flexibility. Mm-hmm. And the thing is that the further you extend the time horizon, the more flexible you can be with your achievement of it, as long as you only get the few things that matter most. And so it allows you to focus and prioritize on those few things that move the needle, rather than be overly obsessive on such a small, narrow window of time that is irrelevant anyways.
So there's a coordination problem that happens when you try to balance too quickly. When you try to have a little bit of fun and a little bit of play and a little bit of fun and a little bit of play, whether it's task switching, whether it's just sort of the cognitive effort of your personality, like your identity is I'm gym guy for 3 months.
Right, yeah.
Hooray. I'm work guy for 3 months. Hooray. But when it's I'm gym guy this morning, I'm work guy this afternoon, it's tough. It's tough to do that. So yeah, kind of the same as you get diseconomies of scale as a business grows because there's more interconnectedness and communication between each person, the more yous there are going on inside. So this is an argument for sort of aggressive periodizing.
I'm a hyper proponent of one single narrow focus. I'll define 2 more terms since the audience didn't ask for it. Sadness is a perceived lack of options. It's why it feels like hopelessness, because you don't know what to do. You don't know what options are available. You see none, which is why it feels like there's no way out. Anxiety is many options but no priorities, which is why you feel scattered but you can't decide. They feel very different, but fundamentally, those are the difference in the conditions that make people feel like they're anxious or they feel like they're sad. And so when we're working through what you were just talking about with, okay, I want to be gym guy and I also want to be work guy, we have many options, but a lack of priorities. And so we have anxiety over the fact that we're not making progress on any of them because we have not been able to say, this comes first. And so if we think about what priority means, it means prior. It comes before everything else. And what I think a lot of people have a hard time doing is being okay with saying no and saying, okay, I will allow myself to just not get fatter rather than get fitter during this period. And what's interesting about most skills is that the amount of effort that it takes to maintain a skill versus the amount of effort it takes to grow a skill is like 1/10 the amount of effort. And so this is where the effort arbitrage is so important in terms of allocation. And so if you do a 4 out of 10 on 10 things, you will make progress on none. You will make the same amount of progress that you could have made if you just did 1 out of 10, which is none. You just don't regress. But the extra 3 points that you save on the 9, you could put on one other item and have a 10 out of 10 or a 13 out of 10 in effort. And then after every periodized chunk of time, have a big W or win that you can look back on and say, I did that, and therefore I am. And so I think that that's how you step up the mountain of progress when you're trying to work on many different skills, quote, at the same time. It's just that the at the same time is over a year, not over a day.
George told me this while we were on mushrooms in Nashville. Fucking brilliant. So I'm there watching.
That's the
hook. Got to get people in the door.
Yeah.
I'm there. 4th of July. George turned to me and he said, "General ambition gives you anxiety. Specific ambition gives you direction." There is nothing more anxiety-inducing than I want to be better and I don't know what at and I don't know how. Like, just think about that for a second. Sort of embody that. It's sort of a chasing. It's a lean in, and it's tight, and sort of your shoulders are up, and there's a ringing in your ears, and you have no idea. It's like a threat. You've heard a noise in the forest, and you have no idea where it's come from. Specific ambition gives you direction.
And I think the concept of specific versus general ambition ladders up to bundled terms. I want this big thing, but I haven't broken that thing down into what I can actually do. Once you get specific into the actions, you don't have a lot of anxiety because you can see what is required in order to get it.
I like what he means. He's talking about essentially seeking clarity. Most people don't seek clarity, so therefore they're anxious, right? When you have that specific direct focus that you can put all your energy into, that is when you're going to be the most clear. And you're going to be the most clear by asking yourself the questions that allow for you to minimize the amount of options that you can give yourself, right? So let's just say I had 10 things that I can focus in on, right? But I say, you know what? I don't really value 7 of these things. I really just value these 3 things. I'm going to put my focus and effort into these 3 things, and that is how I want to go ahead and decide to live my life for the next 6 months. That you're going to make far more progress in those 3 areas as opposed to if you were to just focus on, let's just say 5 or even 10 of those things, and then, you know, you divert your energy into all those things and you don't make any progress at all. Yeah, so just something to think about.
So to circle the loop back on sadness, which is because some people who are listening to this may be sad, so this is for you. To get out of sadness, and I've been sad many times in my life, the thing that's helped me get out of it is realizing that a perceived lack of options is what causes sadness, not a lack of options, a perceived lack of options, which means that all I have to do is figure out what I need to do, and figuring it out becomes the option. And so then I have clarity on the one thing that I need to do to pull myself out of this moment of sadness, which is, oh, I just have to figure out what to do. And that is how I get, at least for me, have gotten out of my sadder periods.
Dude, that's so good. That's so good. That becomes your main focus, right? You see what he's saying, right? Now it's a lot less overwhelming because you have only one focus as opposed to having many different focuses. If you just have that one focus, it's easier to navigate. You have more clarity. You have less anxiety. You have less options. You have only one option, which is to figure out what your next move is. If you know your next move is to figure out your next move, you're focused on only your next move and not anything more. Nothing more, nothing less, and that's all that is important, which is seeking clarity. Then you can figure out all the other little details and smaller consumable routes of action after that. But until you figure that specifically out by trying to seek out clarity, by asking yourself questions, life can be much harder if you don't do that.
Controversial take. You really can solve a lot of male problems by getting in shape and making money. You still have problems. They're just smaller and you have more resources to handle them. The world is there for the taking for anyone who can learn from their mistakes, do what they say they were going to do, and stick with it, even if it's not sexy. What used to make a man acceptable now makes you extraordinary. The bar for winning has never been so low.
Show me two groups of men that need to learn a new skill or achieve anything, where the men that are in shape and have learned to make money do worse than an identical group of those men who are out of shape and have not learned to make money. And it's a skewed purposefully test, because the skill of getting in shape requires many other skills. The skill of making money has many other sub skills. And so the real question is, give me a group of more skilled men and less skilled men, and I promise you the more skilled men will do better. Yeah. And so for anyone who gets offended by that, you're a moron. And so the idea is all men and women benefit from learning more skills. There's no
Wow.
world where being more skilled hurts you.
What about the bar for winning has never been so low?
You got it?
If you think back to college when you were a freshman, you think, wow, this is so hard or whatever. And then by the time you're a senior, you're like, man, these kids are so soft. And so we remember things as harder than they were. But I also think that there is a thread of reality, which is that the younger generation is softer. And I think we are softer than the generation above us. When I think about the guys who were storming Normandy, and I think about the people who would be attempting to do that now as a class, I think that we are softer. And so
That's for
the
damn
thing
sure.
is that if you can barely decide to take any action at all and peel your eyes away from your phone for just a moment, it's so much easier to beat everyone else, because most people are overweight, they're distracted, they're poor, they have so few skills, because it has never been easier to start a business, to make money, to get in shape. It's just also never been easier to do nothing.
Man, isn't that something? That is so profound, man. Not enough people truly talk about that. Like they'd mentioned, the bar for success, perceived success, is so low. All you have to do is literally just a simple task of focusing, and the only way you're going to focus is by minimizing your amount of distractions. What do you want to focus in on? Focus in on that. Remove distractions. Obviously, you must analyze what are my distractions and say, you know what? I'll just go ahead and put them aside for a little bit, because really no one else is even doing that. Most people don't have self-discipline. Most people don't have the discipline to say, you know what, I'm going to pick up a book. I'm going to put my phone away. I'm going to pick up a book. Most people don't have that discipline. Most people don't have the discipline to say, you know what, I don't have to watch this TV show. I'm just going to focus in on maybe a podcast, right? Most people don't have this focus. So the bar for success, the bar for winning is the lowest that it's ever been. But like they had mentioned, the bar for doing nothing is definitely I'm not okay. The bar for doing nothing, or the accessibility to do nothing, is the highest it's ever been, because it's so easy to get distracted. It's so easy to be overweight because convenience can literally take over your life. Just something to think about.
And so, in a world where it's never been easier to do nothing, doing something becomes extraordinary.
Yeah. The bar genuinely never has been so low, which is, it really does blow my mind, sort of the self-defeating cynicism mindset. And I think also that's why the idea of the lonely chapter resonates so much with people, because it literally is like taking the red pill. If you see this version of the world where you go, I can impact my outcomes. I can learn a thing, apply a thing, and then I change as a byproduct of doing that. As soon as you take those steps, you realize almost all of the people around you who have parts of their life that they're not happy about are kind of making a choice for it to be that way. Now,
Of course.
it may be an uninformed or an ignorant choice because they haven't taken said pill. And then you go, oh, fuck. That means that all of the things I don't like about me and I don't like about my life are my
Choices.
responsibility, because I can change it. But given that you've got generalized cynicism everywhere, as opposed to thinking, I'm despondent, this sucks, I wish that the world was more hopeful, you can still think that and also go, that means that my competition has never been weaker, more vulnerable, more fragile. The ability to set myself out from the pack has never been easier.
I think people struggle a lot with the concept that
That's an interesting point right there. That's definitely an interesting point for sure. Man, come on, man. Come on. Oh, man. You already know what time it is.
something can be both painful and empowering. It's this hurts, therefore it's bad. When taking full accountability of your life with all of the deficiencies that you have may be the most painful thing that you do when you look at yourself in the mirror and say, this is my fault. But in saying, this is my fault, those are also the first two steps of progress, because it's my fault, not anyone else's, which means it's my responsibility and my action that can change that. And I think that marrying short-term pain with long-term progress is one of the first connections that most people who are on that path have to make.
This is the lead indicator of what will be the lag indicator that I want.
People get frustrated not achieving what they want because they assume that they're going to jump across a cavern in one leap. But if you picture your goals like you're trying to build a bridge across that crevice, and every brick that you put on that bridge is progress, and each one of those bricks represents a skill that you need to learn along the way, it just takes all the way until you get to the other side that you can actually walk across. And so the walking across is the outcome. It's the external perceived achievement. But if you can reframe your progress as, what are the 100 things on this checklist? What are the 100 skills that I need, the micro skills that I need? Then you can have much faster feedback cycles of wins that you're achieving along the way. And I think if you can define it that way, then you can feel like you are winning, A, more often, but B, with higher intensity, because as you win, skills stack on top of each other. And so I give this example a lot, but I like it, is that if you learned how to do math, that's a skill. Great. If you then learn how to do accounting, that's a leveled up version of that skill, but you have to know how to do math before you can do accounting. Once you learn how to do accounting, you can learn how to do transactions and structure deals. And then all of a sudden you can become a CFO. And if you learn how taxes work and insurance work, then all of a sudden you become, and you learn how to raise money. All of a sudden you can be a rainmaker. But the thing is that the gap between rainmaker and I know how to do math feels very big. But if you look at all of the micro things along the way, you might not get your first major deal done, which is what everyone man, he did that deal and made $20 million on one signature. Must be nice, right? And it is. But if you break those things down into the requisite skills, then you can make significantly more progress along the way. And I think that is more positively reinforcing. And I'm sharing this because this has been a perspective that has served me so well in my life, because the goals that I have now take many years to come to fruition. Like I'm working in a goal that in the next probably 18 months, I will have been working on for 13 years, and it will probably come due. And the crazy thing is that the bigger your goal, the bigger your timeline has to be. But the even crazier thing is that the bigger your timeline, the easier it is. If I said, you have to learn French and you don't speak French, and you have to do it by tomorrow, it's impossible. You're not going to do it. There's no way that you're going to be able to do it. But if I said you have to learn it in a decade, you're like, oh, I could easily do it. You could probably learn 10 languages in a decade. And so all of a sudden, the goals that you have can be significantly more achievable, and you can feel like you're consistently making progress by moving out your timeline. But because people are so short-term minded, because they can't just stop scrolling over and over again, they actually make it harder for them to achieve their goals, because the only goals that they deem acceptable are ones that are on an unrealistic timeline. And so they doom themselves from the beginning.
How to avoid tons of problems in life. Go to bed on time.
So I love these. I want to find single behaviors that have many positive outcomes. So if you think about leverage as what you get for the effort you put in. If you have lots of leverage, then it means you can do one thing and get many big outcomes, right? Or one very big outcome. That's high leverage. If you put a lot of work in and get a very little bit out of it, you have low leverage. And so the highest form of leverage I think of are, what's one behavior or one skill that I can learn that then has many, many downstream impacts. And so and this is specifically, I'll say, for the 20-ish year olds, so 20 to 30, 20 to 35, if you can simply go to bed on time, you avoid drinking and getting in a DUI, you avoid early pregnancies, you avoid messing up your work because you don't sleep well, because you show up hungover the next day, and then you don't get the career advancement that you want, or you get the judgments from your coworkers from the fact that you're responsible because you drink, even though it might have been responsible drinking, but you still smell like booze because it's in your system. If you go to bed on time, it's less likely that you'll get mugged. It's less likely you'll be in a car accident. Like there's all of these downstream impacts from one single behavior. And you also have better quality sleep in general if you go to sleep at the same time every day over and over again. So that means that you have life extension things that happen. You look younger. And so now 5 years, 10 years later, people are like, wow, you look so good for your age. There's all of these things from one central behavior, which is just fucking go to bed on time. And so if you want the action for this, you set your alarm for when you go to bed, not for when you wake up. If you set your alarm for when you go to bed, you will always be able to wake up naturally at whatever time you wake up. And it's very difficult to oversleep when you go to bed at 9, because you can get 8 hours of sleep and still be up by 5.
What are some of the other behaviors that fit in that category, do you think?
Oh, the mega bang behaviors?
Mm-hmm. I'll give you one that a friend gave me while I think. Buying a dog was his. So
he doesn't like
externalizing your sense of self, having something which gives you unconditional love. Your step count has just quadrupled at least. There is a sort of degree of responsibility. It's sort of early onset furry child rearing that makes you a better parent in future. Just downstream from this one decision, an essentially infinite number of good things happen. Are you grinning at me for?
My team's smiling because they know that there's probably like one thing that I tell everyone not to do.
Get a dog?
Yeah.
Wow. Why don't you want them to get a dog?
So I think that getting a dog for the reasons that you outlined makes sense for living life satisfaction. Like if you don't walk, walking a dog is a good thing. If I already walk, I don't get that benefit. If I have interpersonal relationships and an outside version of awareness of self, then I don't necessarily get the benefit. But there are significant costs to having a dog, which for me, from a making money perspective, because that is the game that I like to play, it costs a lot. Dogs cost a tremendous amount. And so they cost you not being able to go to events. They cost you having to break up in the middle of the day to go home to let the dog out. They cost actual money. The amount of total time that you spend walking the dog, if you already work out, is most of the time just wasted. Now you
Shit
can say, hey, I'm
sounds
listening
so
to a
fucking
podcast,
heartless.
fine. But if it
That
but
shit
it
sounds
will
so
intro
heartless.
to deep work for the most part. And so so to give you context on how extreme I am about this, Layla bought a dog, and then I got her to give it away.
What sort of dog was it?
That's pretty crazy,
King
dude.
Charles Spaniel, the little
Nice, strong British
yeah,
dog.
super nice dog. Nothing wrong with the dog.
Yep.
Good dude.
Racist decision.
Yes, and so
That's
we
crazy,
just
Chris.
gave it to somebody else in a good home, and it's very happy. And you know what? It probably forgot about me instantly.
What else? What are some of these other big bangs?
I mean, there's obviously the exercise, because like if you think about what are the big things that, because the dog one was downstream from. I mean, for me, a big one there is exercise. Like if you walk
it's
1 or 2
fitness.
times a day.
It's like physical and psychological health,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah, so it has multiple there. I would say eating your body weight in grams of protein per day.
It's a great one.
So if we think about lean body mass is one of the big predictors for long-term health and things like that, there are only 3 things that are anabolic: hormones, resistance training, and protein. Like if someone doesn't eat protein and they start eating protein, they have more muscle. Like you don't have to exercise. If you just eat more protein, you gain muscle, because you lose less muscle because more of it comes from your diet than eating away the muscle you have. Like that's it. Like those are the 3 things. And so like you can do one of them. And the nice thing is, for most people who want to operationalize this, there's this big idea, and I'm not going to get into food and fitness stuff because dear God, but people think I have to eat healthy and it's this big amorphous thing. But if we chunk it down, it means that you need to pick 2 things that you like to eat in the morning that have the macros that you need to hit. And you can try as many times as you want, because you only need 1 or 2 that you actually like, and then you can stick with it.
This is one of the best insights that you had about diet, which is people overcomplicate trying to deconstruct what a diet consists of. But if you actually look at what you eat across a year, it's probably 5 meals on rotation, maybe less. I think I've probably got 3 good meals in my locker. You know, my Gordon Ramsay would be fucking ashamed of us coming from the same country. So, okay, we'll just optimize those 3 meals or those 5 meals.
And that's it. And the thing is that a lot of personal development things, business things are a lot like that, where they feel like an elephant when you are trying to break down this mat. Like, I have to learn nutrition. There's 5 meals, 10 meals max that you eat 90% of the time. You just need to shift the dynamic of those meals.
Even the restaurants that you go to, even the way that you order your food in the restaurants.
That's it. And so that would be one that I would say is a super high leverage. One thing you can do is just change the 3 to 5 meals that you eat most commonly to be the ones that are more aligned with what you want.
And go to bed on time.
And go to bed. I mean, shoot, if you go to bed on time and you do that,
King of the world.
King of the world.
This is one from me. Having a clue is overrated. There's this funny myth that people actually know what they're doing. I've spent time around some of the richest, smartest, highest status people on the planet, and let me tell you, it's idiots all the way up. Normalize saying, I don't have a clue. I'm going to work out how to do it anyway. Having a clue is overrated.
One of my green flags for intellect is someone being able to say that they don't know. Like, it's almost inverted at this point, because I think at some point during school, if a teacher calls on you and you say you don't know, you're punished for that. And so we have such a repetitive cycle of both having it happen to us and watching people like us have a punishing experience that it's very, very hardcore taught to us to never say that we don't know. But that most basic lie trains us over and over again to never say what we actually think. And if we don't know, then that may be one of the easiest ways to start telling the truth.
It's kind of the same as the, if I can't trust your no, I can't trust your yes.
I love it, yeah.
It's the exact same energy.
Not knowing is really powerful, because then learning becomes the only clear directive. And so if we know what learning is, which is same condition, new behavior, then it's like, what do I need to change about what I do in order to learn this thing? It also allows us to say many things are not worth learning because they probably won't affect my life in any way.
Well, think how much you pity the person who, like, it is literally the worst. If you imagine a quadrant of knowing and not knowing and thinking you know and thinking you don't know,
Right.
the worst quadrant to be in is thinking you know whilst not knowing, right? And that is every single person who isn't prepared to say, I don't know,
Yeah.
and internally doesn't believe it. I've already got the answer for that. You know, they are unable to transition across into white belt or beginner mentality. They're always in the I know about that. I know about that.
I think Mark Twain said, it's not the things we know that kill us, but the things that we think we know but just ain't so.
A lot of self-work can be summarized into thoughts aren't true, feelings don't require actions, things aren't good or bad, they just are. Our greatest enemy is ignorance. To change your life, change your surroundings. Our actions, not our pasts, define who we are. I think that's pretty much probably 95% of self-work.
Sounds pretty good to me.
I stand by my statement.
Thoughts aren't true. Feelings don't require action. Things aren't good or bad, they just are. Our greatest enemy is ignorance. To change your life, change your surroundings. Our actions, not our pasts, define who we are.
Man, I could unpack all of those. So let's start with ignorance. So I am not a moralist, but if I were a moralist, then I would say that ignorance is the only evil and therefore knowledge is the only good. And so most atrocities, if we define them that way, that humans inflict on one another comes from ignorance. We don't know something about the other person or the other party. And if we had absolute context on why someone does what they do, if we lived their life, then we would have absolute knowledge on it, and then we would be them. And so then we probably wouldn't try to hurt them because we would be them. And so I see the pursuit of knowledge and its corollary, how I like it, the pursuit of learning, changing our behavior, to be my ultimate purpose in life. Because if I think about myself as going through life, then I want to learn as much as I can, which is changing my behavior, ideally suited to the direction that I want to go in. As for if you want to change your life, change your surroundings. If we want to behave a certain way, then we want to increase the likelihood that a behavior occurs. And so B.F. Skinner said this, and I just love this. It's like my most savage quote of his. He says, people say you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. False. He said, if I dehydrate the horse, I salt its mouth, I put it in the heat, and I put its face 1 inch away from water, I can veritably guarantee that it will drink. And I
What
think
a
about
fucking
that
quote, dude.
visual all the time when I think about myself as the horse. And I think to myself, what is the behavior that I want, drinking water? And what is the salt in my mouth? And what is the dehydration, the motivation for this behavior that I can create? And so I am not a believer in free will. I believe that we respond to the conditions that we've had, and then we learn behaviors as a result of those things. And so, for example, I could get everyone in here, the entire crew, to get naked. Guarantee you, I could do it. All I would do is I'd just crank up the temperature and I'd wait. And eventually, everyone would get naked. It would happen. And so everyone has this idea that they have this free will.
The fuck is
But
what
that's
kind
what
of
would happen.
fucking things go through your fucking mind? I'm gonna play this one more time, man. You were very, very convinced that you can get everybody's clothes off in this bitch. Hold up,
All I
man.
would do is I'd just crank up the temperature and I'd wait. And eventually, everyone would get naked. It would happen. And so everyone
What?
has this idea that they have this free will. But that's what would happen eventually.
Yep.
And so
What?
if that's true, then we have significantly less control and at the same time more control of our behavior if we can stack the deck in our favor. And so part of the reason going to bed at 9 p.m. is so powerful is because we're changing the conditions so that we can change our behavior. If all of your friends are poor, Harvard did that long study and said that the number one correlate was your reference group, which is who you compare yourself to. Also note, not who you spend the most time with. It's who you compare yourself to. And so if you want to change your life, change who you compare yourself to, number one. But
I like that.
part of who you compare yourself to is who you spend your time with, or who at least you consume the most of. So if you're doing this, then maybe that's a good thing, or maybe it's a terrible thing because you're comparing to the wrong people. But either way, if you want to get fit, if you get around fitter people, you will be deprived of fitness because you'll be the least in shape person. And then all of a sudden you'll be more motivated. If you are poor, but you're the richest of your friends or the same level of wealth as your friends, then get around people who make more money. And then of course people say, but I can't get around people who make more money. Okay. No one else has ever done it. No one who has had it worse than you has ever figured out how to do it. You're right. Right. Of course you're not right. So shut the fuck up.
Talk that shit, boy. Talk that
Thoughts
shit.
aren't true.
Oh. I mean, how many things do we think every day that are just false? One, they can be factually false, but also from the reactionary perspective. I'll give you an example. So,
I'll give you one example. The fact that he said something about fucking if he turns up the heat, he literally just said this. He said, if I turn up the heat, I guarantee everybody's taking their clothes off. What are you talking about? What? What are you talking about?
Someone miscommunicates and wrongs me in some way. I get angry and think I should wrong them back. Now, that's my first thought. If I then say, what does that behavior increase the likelihood of occurring as a result? What do I want to have happen as a result of my behavior? Well, I want them to apologize, or I want them to just not do that again. Well, then me reacting back to them increases the likelihood that they will retaliate. And so in doing what my first thought was, I increase the likelihood of the negative occurrence that I'm trying to avoid. And so thinking through what happens after that thing in interpersonal dynamics and also from a business decisions perspective has helped me so much. Like I'll give you an example of one that happened not that long ago. Somebody reached out to me, relatively big account, and says, hey, can you read my book? It would mean the world to me if you left me an endorsement. And I said, out of respect for you, I won't just ghost this message or give you a half-hearted answer and then just hope that you forget that I said yes. I'm not going to endorse your book, but you're welcome to send it to me. I will probably just flip through it because I have a lot of other books that I need to read that are more closely related to my goal. But I appreciate the flattery that's implied in you asking me to do that. Before I wrote that message, I was like, okay, what do I want to have happen after I send this message? Now, if I say, if I just ghost him, then I will probably have a null outcome. And he'll probably have a slight negative because he'll remember, but he'll be like, okay, fine, that was his way of saying no. But if I compliment him, thank him for the compliment with me, and also tell the truth, I'll probably get somebody who in the future will know that my yes means something when I choose to do it. And so it's thinking like 2 steps ahead of what happens after I say this thing back, and how do I increase the likelihood of that second move, not the first move? And it sounds silly to say because people are like, oh, of course, but like I don't think most people do that. And it has helped me so much. And even like with interpersonal dynamics with my marriage with Layla, if I want Layla to talk to me a certain way, then if I punish her when she doesn't talk to me that way, what she'll really do is she'll avoid talking to me in general. And so it's like I have to find a time when she does that thing so that I can immediately reward her so that I can increase the likelihood that it occurs. And so I think about this all the time with most of the dynamics that we have. And so anyways, I'll just stop on that tangent. But
I think this is something, especially over the last year, that I've, as a rehabilitating people pleaser, big people pleaser, being able to make your needs known, being able to make demands, is a real skill. And it's so strange, given that pursuing your needs is maybe one of the most fundamental human things that there is. But I kind of realized that, especially people that you respect in a sort of social dynamics way, people don't want to hear what they want to hear. They want to hear what you actually think about a thing. So many times someone will ask your opinion. What do you think of the Oppenheimer movie? what you think they want to hear is whatever they think, which is, oh, wasn't it great? Did you watch it in IMAX? Yeah, I did. Did you get Sour Patch Kids? Yeah, I did. But what they actually want to hear, if you were to say, do you know what it is, man? Like, I don't know, it was just a little sort of drawn out for me, and all of the visual effects felt a little bit more. I haven't seen it. I don't fucking know. But what you think people want to hear is not what they actually want to hear. They want to hear what you think. And that requires you to tell the truth. And oddly enough, that means that telling someone what they don't want to hear ends up with a bigger net positive for you than actually giving them the thing that they wanted.
For the business owners or for the advertisers in the room or the people who make content, by the way, this is the ultimate hack, is just tell the truth. Because when you do that, you will by definition make very unique content because everyone else is so afraid of thinking or saying what they actually think. And so
I'm at a point where if you don't function by just telling the truth, there's honestly just no point of any interaction ever. If you're not going to be telling the truth 99% of the time, there's no point in having conversation, even in thinking, even in existing, in my opinion. Tell the truth. Just live with the results. The results are going to be the best that they could have ever been for whatever the situation is. Tell the truth because you have more to lose than to gain if you don't tell the truth. That's for sure.
you can stand out without trying to stand out. The problem is that the vast majority of people who, quote, make content or try to, quote, add value, just regurgitate what they think adds value rather than just saying what they really think.
Also the benefit of experience, right? Because it's the only way that you can stress test whether or not this thing that you're trying to talk about is an actual thing. And you also get an extra perspective on that too, when you know that this is what most of the people say about a thing, and I have tried it, and this is my perspective on not only the thing, but why other people think that this thing is a thing, given that I know that it doesn't work. Feelings don't require action. Very similar.
I think this one is super powerful for, will relate all phases, but especially the beginner. So if you're a beginner, you have to separate you feeling something and you acting on that feeling, because you may feel hopeless many, many times, but you need to continue to do the activities that are aligned with your goal. You may feel hungry, but you need to not eat the cookie to stay aligned with your goal. You may feel angry, but know that retaliating at your coworker has no likely positive outcome. You may hate your boss, but undermining them in front of the team may make you feel good in the moment, but again, destroy your long-term career prospects. And so I think creating a gap. And so I was talking to one of our CEOs who was having a little bit of stress issue, and I said, I want you to think that you're a Yeti can. I want you to think you're one of these cans that has a vacuum between both walls. I was like, you got your feelings on one side, you've got your internal temperature, and you've got your external temperature. And I was like, I just want you to do this. Just create space, and space within the context of behavior is time, which is when I feel something and I have the desire to act on it, you can, at that moment, you have the lowest action threshold, which means that you're the highest likelihood of behaving or doing something is when you have this feeling. And
True.
so I want to make as logical of decisions as I possibly can. Hopefully we're all aligned on the fact that logical decisions in general work out better than illogical decisions. And so if we make logical decisions on a regular basis, then we'll have longer term outcomes. If we want to increase the likelihood that our decisions in general
I'll be honest with you. If you're watching this live, feel free to leave it in the comments. We have a live chat going on, so please leave it in the comments. Say, hey, I'm watching. If you want me to continue this, please let me know. If you don't want me to continue this and switch to something else, also let me know. I've already watched two over 3 almost hours of this podcast, and I don't know if there's really anything good left in this. I'm sure there is, but I don't know, it's not piquing my interest right now. But please let me know, and if you, like I said, if you like this type of content, feel free to look back at the last 2 times that I did this for this specific episode. There was so much good content in this episode. I don't know, at the end I'm just kind of getting a little bit bored, but feel free to tap in with those episodes. One thing I want to say, I'm actually gonna just end it off. One thing I do want to say, I'm doing. Hold on, I got you. Hold on. If you're watching this, I'm doing an interesting thing when it comes to self-improvement here this next upcoming 10 weeks, every single week on Thursday, I'll be having a podcast where I'll be talking about dating. So if there's any specific topics or problems that you have with dating, feel free to leave it in the comments. I'll be going over a lot of the things and hopefully covering a lot of the bases that are going to be the foundation of my course that I will eventually make. So if dating is something of your interest, if you're struggling and have a problem or see a problem that you observe within a lot of people that you think is worth talking about, feel free to leave it in the comments, and then I'll definitely go ahead and discuss it, and it should hopefully be an interesting conversation. But I'll just end it off. Y'all have a good rest of your day, man. Next podcast is going to be on Thursday. Just tap in with that. It's going to be something on dating, and should be good. I'm looking forward to this next 10 episodes of the podcast, my first podcast series that I have done. And yeah, it's simple as that. Y'all have a good night, man.